Hello, my name's Mark Harvey. I'm a freelance photographer, and at the beginning of COVID last year, I lost 90% of my work. So I thought I'd start to come down here, down to the Arch Project, and just volunteer doing odd jobs. So I was cleaning out drains, just anything that was needed really. And I started to help deliver food. And then I started to think, well, I'll try and take some pictures and document this. And I found that by actually going outside the gate and talking to people and building relationships, they started to become more relaxed with me and allow me to start taking photographs.
So back in February 2020, COVID was coming to the UK. We were trying to think about how we could possibly operate in a safe manner with the people that we're supporting, because there's so many underlying health conditions, both physical and mental. I don't think anybody could have anticipated the impact of what was going to happen 18 months ago, but we were determined that we were going to continue to offer the best service that we could with the resources that we had.
There was this one afternoon when suddenly the impact of what was going on in the country hit, and I was frightened, to be quite frank. All our plans for the year were just gone. I didn't know how we would raise money. I didn't know how we would afford to do the work. I didn't know how we'd have the staff. We didn't lose the hope that we would be able to offer a service, but we felt fairly clueless about what it would be that we would do and how we would do it. So we were making up plans almost every day about what we would do in the future.
We had to follow government restrictions of a new lockdown for 12 weeks. So we had to ask the majority of our staff and volunteers to work from home. This meant that we lost 85% of our experienced resources.
Then we just had to make a decision. What do we do? And so we just decided to tell Sheffield what we were doing and the impact on the project.
Hi, I'm Tim Renshaw, the Chief Executive of the Cathedral Arch Project, and we're on day 4 now of lockdown, Thursday the 26th. And the whole city centre has changed, apart from the fact that there are people who are still on the streets here. And life has become incredibly strange, and very strange for those people on the streets. We've been feeding people all week and giving people access to showers and laundry and telephone, and helping them to get in touch with other agencies and things like that. And now we're running out of some important things like bread, but also containers so people can take food away. And if anybody has anything like that they can donate or give to us or help us to buy, we'd be really grateful for that support.
And there was this overwhelming level of response. From other agencies who were having to close, making volunteers available to us, shops that were closing, giving us food and milk and all sorts, and people phoning up, offering their help in any way whatsoever. And fortunately, funds coming in to make sure we could do the work. So out of this absolute tragedy, we were left with a really hard way of working with people. But suddenly we knew we'd got all the resources to be able to do it. And that was a real game changer for us in the lockdown period. And then we went on to share that story every week by putting videos out to tell people what we were doing. And again, that meant that people got in touch with us and supported us and encouraged us and offered us help and resources. And that was just fantastic from the Sheffield public.
When lockdown kind of happened, all my work disappeared. So it was kind of a bit of quite a scary time, but you kind of hope that things are going to get back to normal, and you think, well, what can I do now that there's no work? And it was Mark, actually. I'd worked with Mark in the past, and he called me up and said he'd been doing some interviews and he'd been talking to people at the Arch Project, and he needed a way to kind of get that out there, because it's not really something he kind of did. He took photographs and he got this audio recorder and he was capturing these stories of people that were on the street and were struggling. And it was how could you get those stories out, to everybody else? I volunteered to help with that. I took the audio recordings, I took his photographs, and we made them into little videos. And it was kind of my way of helping the Archer Project to tell the stories of these people that were struggling and get donations, get people to come and help and volunteer themselves.
So I don't know whether many of you can remember or will have even seen the city centre at that time, but it was absolutely desolate, and the people actually who were invisible most of the time to the general public actually became the most visible on the street. A lot of the cafes had closed down, transport was limited. It was a really, really tough time for the people that we support, and also for the people that volunteered and worked for us for a long, long time.
I suppose it was easy for us to forget that actually there was nothing else available to people. There was no water out there. There was no place to go to a shop. There was no place to go to a toilet. The gratitude and the thanks for the fact that we were still there and the fact that there was food or there was somebody just to speak to. Not just us, but people like the outreach team, the framework team, and volunteers from other agencies with us.
It was really eye-opening. I think I was like most people. You see homeless people, on the streets, and you try and help by offering them some money or whatever it is. If you've got any, we live in a cashless society now, so it's quite difficult to do that. And when I'd heard some of the interviews that Mark had done already and some of the stories that were coming through, it really pulls on your heartstrings to think like, what can I do to help? And I know how to do this. I know how to film. I know how to edit. I know how to tell stories. So it felt like that was the thing that I could do. So I started volunteering by coming down every week or every other week and getting Tim to do updates. We were getting them out there. We were getting them on Facebook. And we were kind of getting the message out there.
It had been a really normal day at the project. We'd fed people through the gates. People had been coming in to use a telephone. We'd had conversations with people and all of that sort of stuff.
I mean, things were changing on a daily basis. At one period of time, we could offer a service inside to about 30 people at a 2-metre distance and still try and have some sort of relationship with the people that we're supporting.
And I left quite late, about 5:30. And as I left, there were a few people just outside the project. And one person in particular stood at the gate, and I said good night to her, and I'd see her the following day. By the time I got home, people were phoning me to say that the fire brigade were at the project and smoke was coming out of the building. And that was absolutely terrifying. I didn't know if I'd left something, if I'd done something wrong. But then the following day, even then, we were facing the story that somebody we'd been supporting, who was really quite unwell, it seemed, had broken into the building and set fire to it.
The day after the fire, myself and Mark were actually out filming the street cleaning team to try and tell that story. And Mark got his phone call, and we just came straight back to the project, and we couldn't believe it. It was the devastation and all the damage.
We lost half of the building. So where we could support up to 30 people a day, went down to 6. So it was just a horrific time for everybody.
Timing seemed like the key element on the day to get the story out there, the misinformation about what had happened. So it was a case of documenting that. That's what, like, Mark takes photographs, the video camera was straight out, and we were filming that, and we did an update with Tim, and it was really sad to see the devastation, but also at the same time people rallying around to still try and carry on with the project.
Even the building in that state, we managed to serve a breakfast. And then we got people in scrubbing the essentials down in order for us to operate the next day and the next day and the next day.
There was this outpour from people that, saw what had happened, and they wanted to help, and whether that was physically coming down to the project or donating.
So we had to move to a service where we were providing people with food and drinks through the gate, which is an awful experience, really inhumane. We were actually, it puts a barrier up between ourselves and the people that we're supporting. We've built trusting relationships with these people for years, and all of a sudden now we're having to 2-metre distance, behind a gate, serving people through what looked like a prison gate. It was just an awful experience.
As we expected, she went to court and she was given a custodial sentence, and sadly she caught COVID and she died in prison. So after all of that, she wasn't in a safe place, and it affected the staff quite deeply that actually she died.
I felt the loss of some of the relationships. I think some of the people couldn't understand why they couldn't come into the centre, because actually this is many people's home, it's many people's safe place, and we had to prioritise government restrictions over people that we're actually supporting, which was quite heart-wrenching actually for a lot of the staff and volunteers.
I noticed that by talking to people outside the gate, there was one person that turned up called Joe. He was a chef. He'd worked all of his life. He'd lost his accommodation because it went with a job. And he said that he wasn't sleeping on the street because he was too nervous to sleep at night, so he'd stay awake all night and then doze during the day. But he was reliant on the project for meals, and he'd never experienced this before, and he found it quite shocking.
One of the hardest things that I personally found difficult to deal with was supporting people through the impact of the domestic violence that seemed to heighten at such a fast rate throughout the restrictions. There's a lady that we work with called Connie. It's taken me 4 years to build up a trusting relationship with Connie, and she was very clearly, visibly injured. I don't know what that had done to her mentally, because we couldn't have the safe space to be able to discuss her individual situation. So there was no opportunity for me to talk with Connie about her situation, about what she wanted to do, be a listening ear, put her arm on her shoulder just to give her some reassurance, connect her to the right agencies. I felt the loss of our relationship. I think she didn't know where else to turn. It was a very, very difficult time. So as the restrictions eased, we were actually able to rebuild some relationships and to actually get Connie the help that she needs and be able for her to make the choices that she wanted to make.
Here we are trying to rebuild a service with a building that part of it is still burnt out. But actually, I'm really quite hopeful. We've got plans to rebuild the centre and to make it a centre all about health and good health and recovery.
I'm really excited to be able to have dedicated spaces for individual people's needs. For example, some people, Connie and her partner Paul, will probably need to continue to use the service as is for a while, but then for others, for example Mark and Steve and Norma, who are making some transitions out of homelessness into accommodation and addressing other lifestyle issues that they have, some mental health issues that they have, and developing new skills actually. I'm really excited that we're going to have a lively, vibrant, stimulating, healthy environment for people to grow.
Because that's what people who are homeless need. They need space to rebuild life, to recover from some of the things that have happened in the past that have led them to being on the street and to being involved in drug addiction or alcoholism and things like that. So now I can see the plans, and actually there's space in there for us to work in small groups, or for groups to come and hire the place that is all about recovery and actually getting people better. And this place is about, not just about getting people off the street, but about building a new life to make life better for themselves and even get into employment.
I think the experience of starting out volunteering and lending my skills of filming and editing has really opened up my eyes to what happens here and how these people are helped. There's some of the stories I've captured since, and it's really It's so easy to walk down the street and see a homeless person and just go, okay, well, they've obviously got problems. But when you actually know their story and what they've been through, I think it really makes you want to do something about it and help. And this experience has kind of made me want to do that and continue to make films and continue to support this project.
I've been volunteering here for about 6 years. And I suppose a mentor of mine who was a worker here who unfortunately died in May was John Roberts. And John we used to have chats, and he would tell me that some of his school friends who are now successful business people would ask him, why do you work down at the Arch Project working with these scum? And I just thought, well, they don't really know about the work the project does. Is that what we really think of people that attend the Arch Project, that they're scum? Or is there another way that we could possibly welcome them back into society? My hopes for the future, I'm just a photographer, and I'd like to think that my work just shows a more humane side of homelessness than what is generally seen in the media.